So structural lessons and how to structure a lesson in the classroom. As far as my personal preference, I like to break lessons up. I think a lot of people just lean on lecturing and they'll lecture the entire time throughout a lesson. I don't think there's anything personally wrong with that, but in order to increase student engagement in the classroom, what I like to do is break things up. I'll have a little bit of lecture. We'll do sometimes what's called a pair and share, where I'll have students discuss things in pairs or in small groups, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion based on that. Sometimes we'll have just straight up activity days where we will just do activities the entire time with very limited bits of lecture. It really depends on the content that I'm teaching, but I always at some point in the lesson try to involve the students directly, just so that we're keeping the engagement up and we're able to have a conversation and really communicate and practice good communicative skills. So I teach public speaking, which is Comm 2500. I've also taught Comm 1500, which is the Intro to Communication course. It has some public speaking elements, but it also focuses on introducing students to communication theory in more of a broader sense. Kind of get your feet wet a little bit with the general concepts in communication that researchers play with. And so as far as what I want students to get out of the course itself, I really love teaching a public speaking class because it's all about individual growth. Students come into class and some of them are really shy. They're timid, afraid to really express themselves in front of people. So what I like to see is a bit of a shift from that, hopefully to the point where students are more comfortable just being themselves. And that's what's so cool about teaching a public speaking class, is that it ties into your identity and your self-esteem. The more comfortable you can be expressing yourself in front of a group of people, it translates to you being a more confident and charismatic person who lives a more fulfilling life. That's one of those things that I think I get out of it, is seeing that growth and seeing the student perspective. As an instructor, you have to be comfortable with restarting a journey with your students. At the start of the public speaking journey, people are shy. Some folks are not sure what they want to discuss, have a lot of trepidation when it comes to sharing ideas with an audience they might not be familiar with. But by the end of that journey, you see the growth in your students that you hopefully want them to mirror in the real world too. And I think that's where I get the fulfillment from, is seeing that growth at the end of the day. I guess like the thing I would hope that a student would bring to a class that I probably won't be able to necessarily teach you in just one semester is an open mind and an open heart, a willingness to communicate with people that have different ideas than you, a willingness to be open to hearing how somebody feels about something, even if it doesn't confirm what you already believe, and a sense of respect for one another. If a student comes in and they're disrespectful, both towards me and each other, it can really throw the vibe of a class off. So my hope is that when I get a class, that it's a group of just students that are just good people, that are willing to learn and listen to each other and respect one another regardless of difference. My biggest thing is doing the work and trying your best. We have a lot of variance in the assignments that students do. We've got speeches, different types of presentations that cover all genres of public speaking. But we also have written work and quizzes as well, at least I do. So if a student comes in and they're doing the work and they're putting forward their best effort, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and they're going to do well in the class. Even on speeches, I tend not to go below a C for formal speech assignments. If a student comes in and gives a good faith effort, even if they completely botch their speech and they try their best, I try to keep it a C- at the lowest and just give them feedback so that they improve. My goal as a public speaking teacher is never to tear a student down or to make them feel like they can't succeed in developing as a speaker. My goal is to make you feel like you can do anything, and you can as long as you put in the work. Very direct when that happens. So like sometimes we'll do certain activities and I'll be like, talk to your neighbor, and I won't even do like formal groups. And if I notice that a student isn't talking or not saying anything, I will physically go up to them and I'll be like, hey, why don't you join this group? Or what do you think about this? And I'll do the activity with them or the discussion with them. So I'm very hands-on with students like that. if I notice that kind of a pattern emerging. I also always tell my students at the end of class if they need to talk to me about anything or have any questions, I'll set aside a couple minutes just to give students that platform to air out those concerns. I try to spot students like that early on in the semester. That way I can work on building a relationship with them so that they do become more comfortable expressing themselves. The cool thing about online classes is there's a different sense of immediacy. It's a sense of technological immediacy. So when we talk about immediacy, what we really mean is like non-verbally, can I be expressive in front of a group of people and make them feel close and connected to me? You don't so much get that online, but you do get a sense of, you know what, I can share my screen with students. I can show them the resources that they have at their disposal firsthand. Another thing that we get is a little bit more personability in terms of they get to see the space that I live in. They've seen my cats. We talk about real stuff going on in our lives. And I try to create an environment where that's okay and acceptable, because online teaching isn't ideal for a public speaking class, but there are some benefits to it, like what I just talked about. And also the fact that Zoom does have some pretty cool capabilities. I like that you can create breakout rooms and assign groups that way. I also like that you can record lessons, because that means that students that miss get to take notes after the fact if they need to. So there are some benefits to it. I won't say those benefits necessarily outweigh in-person instruction, but they are there. I don't like that I can't see my students, because I don't require anyone to turn their webcam on unless they're giving speeches. But because you can't see your students, you don't necessarily know how engaged they are. When I'm in a class in front of people, I can see on their faces if they're enjoying the lecture, if they're really into it. We can have an emotional connection more easily. Whereas online, you kind of lose that sense of you're sharing an experience with your students through a lesson. Because a lesson, to me, it needs to be challenging. It needs to push students a little bit out of their comfort zone. But it's kind of hard to do that to where like your students feel that sense of shared camaraderie with you. Online, it's harder to establish that. And I also think it's harder for students to form relationships with one another online. And a big part of the class is communicating with the people around you and building community that way. But yeah, actually, this is gonna sound funny. I actually play Dungeons and Dragons now with a group of like 6 guys, including myself. And it's actually students that were former master's students in the communication department. I became friends with them last year. One of them moved up north, got a really good job at the CDC. And so him and another person in the program, they reached out to me. They needed someone else to jump into the group. So in that group, I play a bugbear druid. I'm like this big, gruff goblin dude with lots of hair that casts spells and summons wolves. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
and it's all kind of, yeah, man, it's very theater of the mind, and I've just really gotten into that. I also am a musician. I've been doing that though since before quarantine. The thing I think I'm looking forward to most, there's a couple things, but one of the biggest things for me is I'm actually a faculty friend, which means that I work directly with RAs in residence halls on campus to foster community between faculty members and students living on campus. I really miss that. With quarantine, there's not really much we can do in that sense. We kind of just have to wait for things to go back to normal. But when I am acting as a faculty friend and actually like doing those things, it just is a fun way to build relationships with students that you don't teach. You can actually see what people are going through on campus that live there, some of the struggles that they're having, and you can offer advice and sort of be a mentor to both leaders in those communities like the RAs and community directors, but you can also form friendships with students outside of the classroom, and that's a really, really fun thing to do. Second to that, probably just interacting with my coworkers in our office space. We share an office in Daniel 416 and have some really great conversations with the people I work with. Lots of really intelligent folks work in the department, and we go back and forth on so many things, and make each other laugh between classes, and I kind of miss that sense of community in the office space that we share. So when I started in my master's program, my research was very focused on face work, which is how people preserve their reputation in front of others. Like, say that you or your organization makes a mistake in a press release, and you have to recover your image and receive more good standing with the public that you disappointed at first. My research used to look into that and how people sort of save their reputation and save face. This is that it feels like a family. We're not perfect, we bicker. Some of us have gripes over stuff that others don't. Sometimes we get into discussions that are difficult, but at the end of the day, the Clemson community, I think, loves each other and is able to come together in times of crisis to really voice their concerns and to make the university experience better for everyone. I think that's what I like the most about it, is that I feel like I'm on a level playing field with everyone, with my students, but also with the people in my department, even the people that have, better degrees than I do and have received further education. They just feel like other people that I can talk to about everyday things. And I don't think you can get that at just any job. There's so many cool things to explore and do. I think my favorite thing about the city of Clemson and the immediate area surrounding it has to be the hiking and the trails that you can go on. There's so many beautiful trails in the experimental forest that you can find yourself stumbling down and getting lost in. And I really love the botanical gardens as well. Both of those places I'll go to if I'm having a hard day or just need to reflect on something. That to me is something that's always brought me fulfillment. I also really like the music scene here too. Before quarantine and all that, lots of places were doing karaoke, open mic, that sort of thing. My favorite Clemson memory actually was when I was doing something for faculty friends. We held a community fest for Dalthat East and Dalthat West in the Dalthat East courtyard. So this community fest had everyone in Dalthat was invited. We had a candy machine, we had popcorn, we had games in the lawn. I don't remember which games in particular, but we had games, and I actually was hosting an open mic during that and ended up playing music for people for an hour or 2 hours, and had a couple friends get on the mic with me, and just had a blast doing that and sharing that part of myself with people in the Clemson community. Because a lot of folks, as being a lecturer, they kind of see me as just like a teacher and that's it, but music's such a big part of my life and me. So getting to share that side of myself with students at an event that was sponsored by a university organization was stellar. I just loved it. I always, at this point, since I've been here, we've been in 2 national championships, and both times I've watched the Natty. One time I literally went downtown with a friend and we stood out there and watched it and cheered alongside everyone. That was probably the most I've ever felt kind of like a big part of the Clemson family. But every year I've had at least one football player in my classes, and they'll invite me to the faculty appreciation dinner that Clemson football hosts. So that's become a bit of a tradition, and I've even had some of my former students that are players tell me, I don't care if I'm not in your class next year, I'm going to invite you. Build relationships with every single person that you can. Even if it's something quick, like sharing your number. Building your network is so important. The more people that you know, the more opportunities will come your way. And the more relationships you keep up, the easier it will be for you to find where you're meant to be. I honestly just feel blessed to be a part of the department that I'm in.